standardized lead conversion best practices. We think that, and kind of observed with other teams kind of all over the place, that folks are either really good at this or really bad at this, right? And we found that like 10% of teams in most parts and 10% of agents find 90% of success with online leads. And everyone else kind of just figures it out and kind of bombs it, so to speak. So I've got some information I want to run you guys through. We're going to talk about 4 things today, right? The first thing we're going to talk about is the problem itself. Why some people seem to do really well with online leads and some people don't. And kind of what we've learned now with the 100 customers that we're actively working with. Have gotten some really good data on this that hasn't just led to us making decisions based on like gut feeling. We've actually got some really cool data on this from across our teams that we're working with. The next thing we're going to talk about briefly is case studies. So I've got 2 specific examples of this training specifically in some iteration, not in its current form, leading to just insane results on the actual tangible side, right? People don't buy online leads because they just want to spend money and hope that something cool happens. People invest time, energy, resources, and money into online leads because ultimately they want to close more transactions, right? So we've got 2 case studies we're going to run you guys through on that front, specifically to kind of give you the, hey, we've shipped this already in other organizations and seen X as a byproduct, right? Third thing that we'll be talking about is like what this actually is, right? We've been talking about launching this lead conversion training for a while now. I'm going to walk you guys through a macro level view of the content itself, right? So what we actually created, where it's going to live, how it's going to look, all that cool stuff, and what kind of outcomes you can expect putting people through it. And then we'll have time for some Q&A at the end, and I'm going to ask you guys for some help with some holes that we have in this thing and trying to figure out what's going to make the most sense. So let's go ahead and jump in. So just for those of you guys that don't know me, I know this kind of got pushed all over. So for those of you guys that don't know me, my name is Chris Gianos. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Humaniz. Also do some speaking and some coaching. I ran a real estate team myself for 2.5 years here in Southern California. Before I got into this side of the business. Previously, before that, I was like a small team leader, had some individual contributor years, etc. Also worked at Zillow for 5 years, started working there when I was 19 years old. Worked there until I was about 23, 24 years old, and then got onto the dark side of the business. Also spent some time in the startup community, love investing in new ideas. If anyone's got one, please feel free to hit me up after this. And if you are so inclined to follow me on Instagram, that is my Instagram handle. Super simple, Chris last name. I talk a lot of shit on Instagram, talk about a lot of stuff, different stuff, lead conversion, real estate, you name it. I got it. So jumping right into the actual meat and potatoes of this and the content itself. So the first thing I want to talk about is the problem, right? We've noticed that across the board, even with some of the top producing and highest producing real estate teams and brokerages in the country, we've noticed that there's a little bit of a pattern. And that pattern is that everyone, for the most part, has a little bit of difficulty with online leads and conversion at scale, right? Even these massive, scaled out, super high performance teams, what we find is if a team leader hires 10 or 15 agents over the course of a couple of months, right? Usually 1 or 2 of those agents seem to intrinsically know what they're doing with online leads and just kind of work out. And usually there's no rhyme or reason as to that person finding success. Right? It could be a new agent that's just really good at sales or someone that's got some experience and worked leads before. There's no real pattern here, right? We've heard the same story across individual agents, right? Where a solo agent goes online and invests their hard-earned commission dollars into different lead sources, Zillow, Realtor.com, you name it. And what ends up happening is some find success and some don't, right? And it's never really hey, it's the lead's fault, right? The leads aren't converting because they suck. We've heard that story since the beginning of time. My friends from Zillow that are on this call have heard that story too, right? I can promise you it's almost never a lead story. So I want to jump into kind of what we've seen and why this happens. So in my experience and what we've learned, and this is across our customer base, teams I've worked with both on a coaching level and ran myself, right? There's really only 2 types of agents in the space right now when it comes to online leads. And I would encourage you to like really think about this, especially if you're a team leader, because there's usually not one or the other, right? ChatGPT did make these. If you haven't played with ChatGPT's image generator yet, it's pretty sick. I think I fed it some stupid prompt like, hey, create me a really good real estate agent. And this is what it created, right? There's agents that find success with online leads, right? And crush it at a super high level. And then there's that don't. I don't know why this chick has like pen ink all over her face. It looks like a pen exploded, right? But this is what it created, right? These are the two types of personalities we see. And I want to dig into a little bit of what makes people good at online leads and what type of beliefs actually do that. So we're going to talk first about dude in a striped suit that looks kind of like, what's that dude's name? Ryan Serhant, right? But a brunette. So these types of agents that are finding success now, they understand that there's no bad leads, just leads that will take a little bit longer to convert. That belief and mindset, we find more than anything, even if someone is talented and knows what they're doing, if they come into the system and come into a training like this with some sort of, hey, I know what I'm doing, but the leads all suck, it doesn't matter what they're taught or what type of training or onboarding they receive on your team. That mentality and attitude first is going to be super important. Next, they've got a standardized conversion process that this type of agent uses every single time. For those of you guys that are in sales roles, and I'm going to get into how we're going to help with this. For those of you guys that are in sales roles, I myself am still kind of in a sales role, right? I do a lot of demos on a weekly basis. I find myself, my conversations are iterative. It's the same conversation over and over and over and over again, right? That's how you build a predictive outcome, is by having a standardized, duplicable process. We find that agents that find success with online leads have a process like that. And most of the time, they're developing it themselves. They've put together this training or idea of how these conversations are sound by either iterative, just doing it over and over and over and over again, or their team leader has something put together and is able to train them on it, which is awesome. But such a small percentage of the time, right? This guy also uses his CRM religiously, makes time to follow up on a weekly basis, is continually filling the top of the funnel with more opportunities, right? So this is the good stuff, right? Let's talk about bad and what usually leads to someone not finding success with that. So this chick is very upset, right? I don't know what's going on with all those computer screens in the background, but visibly upset, right? I'm sure you've heard this before. And for my friends at Zillow or Realtor.com that have heard this, like a lot of the blame is sometimes just on the leads. Hey, I am a good agent. I've spent so much money on all these different platforms. The leads suck. They're all tire kickers, et cetera, et cetera. We've heard that game before. It doesn't matter what type of lead you give a person like this, right? If they have that belief in their brain, it doesn't matter, right? Every lead you give them is going to suck for the most part, right? They wing it. Each interaction that this person has with a customer is not standardized. They just kind of go into it and say, I'm an expert. Hey, I've been doing this for X amount of years, or hey, I've done X, Y, and Z in my career. I don't have a standardized process. I just kind of go and do it and wing this whole situation, which leads to people thinking bad leads, not I'm a bad salesperson. And that comes from lack of a standardized process, right? And lastly, you see those stacks of paper on her desk? Those are her CRM. I know this one sounds like common sense for the most part. Most people on this call are super high level and are like, dude, how the hell could you ever sell real estate without a CRM? We hear it's still consistent, right? So those are the traits of what we usually see on the good and the bad side. And I want to summarize kind of what that looks like. So the mindset towards online leads is ridiculously important, right? And this kind of comes into this training in itself. A big part of this course and training and enablement product we've put together is getting in the psychology of actually like, hey, the leads don't suck, you suck. And I'm obviously during a training or a course not going to scream that from rooftops. That doesn't really make for a conducive learning experience for someone to feel safe. But at the end of the day, part of this is going to be getting people to understand, and this is a big premise in the course itself, the leads are great. It's not a lead problem, it's a conversion problem, right? It doesn't matter what type of training we give someone. If they come in with an unconscious negative bias like that, it's kind of doomed from the beginning, right? Next, having a standardized process. This is the magic in this whole thing, which I'm going to run you guys through here in a second. We've created a standardized process. It doesn't matter where the lead source is coming from. If it's Zillow, Realtor.com, pay-per-click, Google, Instagram, it doesn't matter. We've created a standardized process that folks can go through, including objection handling, including face-to-face interactions. So many people focus so much on that first phone call or a follow-up phone call that you do, where it's an intake script. They forget about what happens when you're face-to-face with someone, or when you're trying to negotiate to get an offer accepted with a listing agent. That's where the magic and conversion actually happens, right? And lastly, CRM hygiene and systematic follow-up with leads. The constant message that we're kind of trying to drill with this whole thing is there are no bad leads, just leads that are going to take a little bit longer to convert. What I would challenge you, especially if you're a solo agent or team leader alike, to think about as we kind of continue on this path and get into it a little bit deeper. Most of the time, if we get 10 or 15 leads as an agent and one of them converts, we're pumped. It doesn't mean the other 10 or 15 opportunities in there are bad. What does it mean? It means that they might take a little bit longer to convert, and we need to be looking at conversion over a longer period of time, not a shorter period of time. Does that make sense to everyone? So it's all an iterative process. So let's talk about case studies real quick before we get to the meat and potatoes of what's actually in this whole thing. So I've tested this now twice to give you guys some context, right? This course itself, when I even hear the word course now, there's so many like wannabe Instagram gurus and stuff that are pushing shit all over the internet. When I hear course or when I hear this or whatever it may be, it almost puts a bad taste in my mouth and I'm the one talking about it, right? I think it's really important to highlight these case studies to kind of give you an idea of what a standardized training process looks like this with online leads, because it's not a, oh, cool, we think this might work. I've done this in two completely separate markets with two completely separate teams now, right? And we've seen results at scale. This isn't a, hey, we think this might work. We've done it and tested it over and over and over again, right? So walk you through to the high level. I want to give you a case study on the first kind of place we did this. So in August of 2020, I joined a company in Southern California called eHomes. They brought me in to scale out their Orange County operation, right? I had 3 agents with me. We had 30 flex connections and no centralized training or onboarding, right? What happened next was pretty awesome. I don't know what happened or how it came to be, but there was part of my brain saying, all right, cool. When I went to work at Zillow as a salesperson, right? I got it on my shirt today. That's pretty cool. When I went to work there when I was super young, the first thing they did was put every agent on the team through a standardized training, right? And when I say agent, it was like a salesperson, right? An inside salesperson. We had to go through, it was like a 30-day long training program to actually get good enough to where they felt comfortable putting us on the phone to actually go out and do our job. And I was sitting there going, all right, cool. If that worked for Zillow, that's got a gajillion-dollar evaluation, we should probably try and figure out how to do that on real estate. Because most of the time, what my experience was as an agent, regardless if you're experienced or seasoned or brand new, 10 years or 10 days of experience, you join a brokerage, they bring you in, they go, cool, here's your key to the front door. We're going to put you on lead flow. Make sure you get good at this script and you're off to the races, right? And don't really think about the ramifications of that and the conversion level. So what we did was we put together this training, right? It was a 5-day long, Monday through Friday, 9 to 1 p.m. boot camp, right? And I taught it myself, right? It wasn't something that we outsourced. It was cool. We're going to do this. We're going to do it the right way. I taught that lead conversion training twice a month, every month for 28 months in a row, right? Recruited about 230, 240 agents. Sold a lot of real estate. I did the numbers, reran it again this morning. Those 2.5 years, we sold 1,300 houses, just over $1 billion in volume and drove $16 million in top line revenue, right? A large percentage of that came from online leads, like probably lion's share, I'd say 60 to 70% of that, right? At the peak of the market, we were taking like 1,000 flex connections every single month. It worked really, really, really well, right? The standardized training and doing it over and over and over again and making sure that it was iterative was the key to that whole thing. Now, when I think about this in hindsight and look at it in the rearview mirror, oh, well, Chris, recruiting was a big part of that. It 100% was. I think in the grand scheme of things, growing a team like this or getting better at online lead conversion, whatever you want to look at, 10% of this is actually scaling and hiring enough people to actually feed the machine. The other 90% is what you do with them. Right? Everyone is so focused on, oh, well, if I recruit, all my problems are solved. That's fantastic if those people know what they're doing. And I would challenge you as a leader, right, or as an agent right now to think about your own journey into the space. When you got your real estate license, think way back. For some of us, that's a long time ago. For some of us, it might be recently. When you get your real estate license, you pass a 150-question multiple choice vocabulary test, right? And then after that, they're like, hey, here's your key to go sell big, beautiful houses anywhere you want in the state. There's no standardized training. So expecting folks, even people that have been, let's say, experienced that have done 10, 15, 20 deals, whatever it looks like, most of those folks do not have a standardized process. They might be in a rhythm where they kind of have a standardized process from just doing it over and over and over again. Who's to say they're doing it right? There's a big argument, and I'm not saying my way is the only way to do it, right? But I would think about it like this. There's a million ways to do it the right way. And when you think about people working primarily sphere and repeat referral and open house stuff, those types of opportunities probably take a little bit different of a skill set than working online leads. We assume that someone who's got experience working with their friends and family in their own sphere is just magically going to be able to take online leads that are a completely different type of opportunity and turn them into escrows, right? It's a completely warped kind of idea. experience with regular leads working, repeat referral, open house and stuff does not normally correlate perfectly to online leads. Sure, there's some overlap, but for the most part, I would argue that any agent needs to be trained in some facet, right? Just because of how poor the actual adoption is in the industry. The second case study that we did, and kind of give you guys a quick run through on this. For those of you guys that know Joe Oz, right? He's a team in New Jersey, super cool dude. He's one of my best friends. We started this whole thing with him, I think it was sometime in 2021. When we got there, there were about 5 agents. We were getting about 30 flex connections a month, no centralized training or onboarding. We did the same thing. So I flew out to New Jersey. We started doing this training, processed it, kind of operationalized it, and got the whole thing rocking and rolling. Joe began hosting it once a month, right? He's now been running it for over a year. They're number one in Tri-State for Zillow Flex. That data I got like 6 months ago. I don't know if it's still accurate or not, but the last time I prepared this presentation, that's where they were at. Got 30 plus agents and scaled to 400 flex connections on a monthly basis, right? So the growth here, again, is evident and apparent. Got something in the chat. Let's see. He still is. Joe Turco. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it, dude. So to run you guys through it, the reason why I wanted to share these 2 case studies is this shit works, right? And the biggest kind of burden we find for most of our solo agents or team leaders or whatever it may be is if it was as simple as, hey, pull a lever, people watch a bunch of stuff and they're off to the races, I would be retired by now, right? The reality is it's not. Training at this level is iterative, and it's something that requires kind of a process to make sure that people are actually getting the information, right? So to run you guys through this, standardized training is the way. Thanks, Chris, for the note. So let's talk a little bit about what the course actually looks like and how we're going to bring this to life. So the idea here is, if you're a solo agent on the call, if you're a team leader, or whatever your role is, the idea here is pull a lever, get on-demand proven lead conversion training for you or your agents, right? What I mean by that is I want someone to be able to come online, push a couple of buttons, and go through something that's going to teach them the entire process from start to finish on how to actually convert, right? And it's not a, well, here's a bunch of scripts, you're off to the races, have fun. I think that education and learning and enablement is 2 parts. The first part is you have to teach someone why this is important, why these different conversations, it's very tedious, are going to be kind of valuable and add up to the greater good. The second part is the how. And then from there, once you actually have the why and the how, it's cool. How are we going to go actually put this into action and make sure that as ourselves or as team leaders, we're holding people accountable to actually performing the results at scale, right? So I want to talk to you guys. Okay, we got that, Chris. Cool. There's an idea we could pull a lever and do that. I want to talk to you about a little bit about how it will work, right? What the idea is and how we're actually going to be putting this into kind of live. Everyone, solo agents, enterprise brokers, and everything in between can enroll, right? I spent the last, it was what, I don't know, 6 months or so actually working on the course outline and generalizing it enough to where we can bring it to market. 2 weeks ago, I got in Tom Ferry's studios here in Dallas, Texas, and shot this thing for like a full week, right? Behind the camera for 5 full days, crushed out the entire course. It's being edited as we speak and put together in a format so we can actually drive the enablement behind it. The course itself and this training will live inside an LMS inside the Humaniz platform. So what is LMS, Learning Management System, right? Imagine a world where you've got a digital classroom that someone can log into. It's going to be a combination of videos, quizzes, et cetera, et cetera. So we're off to the races at that point. But it will all live inside the Humaniz UI, right? So it's one-stop shop. If you're a solo agent, great. You can get in here. You'll have ability to kind of go through the course, get the quizzes, all that cool stuff. If you're a team leader, the whole idea is recruit, onboard, train, right? All in one centralized place. We can help you with the recruiting component. I know a lot of you guys on this call are already customers of ours, followed by the onboarding and administrative stuff, ICA agreements, W-9s, all that cool stuff we're already working on, followed by, okay, you hired a bunch of agents. Now we need to get them trained up to actually convert the leads that you're paying all this money for. You'll have a push button solution for that inside the Humaniz UI. No reason to leave it. It's 72 separate modules. It's going to take someone 5 to 7 days to go through, right? We're being very intentional with not just drowning people with information and saying, hey, have fun, go through it all and just sit there and text on TikTok while you're watching it, right? It's one of those things where we're going to intentionally throttle people to slow down. And after each module, there will be a cool. Now that you've done this, here's what you need to go do in order to actually make sure this information sticks, regardless if that's a role play with team leader or role playing with a friend or colleague or your dog, even whatever it looks like, just making sure that people aren't throttling through this at a million miles an hour. There's an accompanying workbook and role play to activities to ensure that the info sticks. If it were as simple as watch videos, cash commission checks, I would be retired, right? I'm not kidding. I'd literally be on a desert island somewhere just hanging out. It's not that easy. The tough part is, and what we've put tons and tons and tons of time, energy, resources, and thought into is, once someone has actually gone through the course and understands the how do we make sure that they have the tools to go hold themselves accountable to actually start doing this in the field, right? Everything is fun in the practice arena, right? But when you actually get out there and have to get uncomfortable, how do we make that part easy, right? And if you're a team leader, how do we make sure that you guys have the tools to hold the agents accountable and actually make sure that the information is stuck, right? There's quizzes in progress tracked along the way. At the end, you're quote unquote Humaniz certified, right? There will be quizzes along the way in addition to like a final exam at the end, complete with role playing and all these different exercises that need to happen in person to make sure that the information is stuck. But the idea is after it's done, this person is now competent at online leads, right? And again, we've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of iterations at this point to know exactly what to test for and make sure that someone's actually got it and they don't just, again, TikTok and watch like puppy videos while they're actually cruising through the course. So the course itself is really, really, really simple. And this is the part I want to spend the majority of our time on. So the first thing that we cover in this course, this is not a, hey, here's a 30,000 foot view of how to just sell real estate, right? For those of you guys that are agents on the call, if someone told you that they could teach you how to be a perfect agent in 5 days, you should run the other direction because they're full of shit, right? It's not reality. The course and what we've outlined in the curriculum for this is super linear. We're only focusing on like 5 things, right? The first thing is the intake of online leads from Zillow, Realtor.com, pay-per-click, and Facebook and Instagram. Those are the only sources we're talking about, right? And I know what you're thinking, well, Chris, what about open house? What about this? What about this? This is super linear intentionally, right? We wanted to make it so simple and so functional at a core that like all that other stuff is great, but we want to make sure that this is a pull a lever, get better at online lead conversion because it's such a big problem we constantly hear. The intake of these opportunities are all different. For those of you guys that have experience working on online leads, there's different types of leads that even come from Zillow. There's little subsections, right? There's different types of leads that come from Realtor.com and pay-per-click and all these different things. Not just giving people the scripts and saying, hey, go do this, but explaining the how and the what is what makes this so different, right? It's not a, hey, here's a script, go do it. It's explaining the script, explaining the customer journey from how they go from stranger on the internet to actually on the agent's phone that makes this entire thing different. People that go through this not only will be equipped to have these conversations, but they'll be equipped to actually have what happens if they get an objection? What happens if the conversation doesn't go well? What we've done, oh, can you guys hear me? I think my AirPods cut out for a second there, sorry. What we've done here is like, again, from doing this over and over and over and over again, we know what the most common objections are that constantly come up, right? So we've given them these tools, regardless if it's halfway through the call, the beginning of the call, whatever it may be, so that they're not just going for the good leads. When I hear agents talking about, oh, well, I want the good ones, or this was a good lead or whatever it may be, usually what that means is this client was a complete fucking laydown, excuse my French, and I didn't have to do anything to put this client into escrow, right? It's they came in pre-qualified, willing to work with me exclusively, and they bought a house within 30 days. The frequency of those is small. That doesn't happen very frequently, right? So by giving people these kind of pathways to make sure that every lead gets treated the same, regardless of how long it's going to take, is the key here, right? Next, what happens after they hang up the phone and how to actually prepare for a showing buyer consultation. From what we've seen and what I've studied that's in the marketplace now, right? From Zillow, from Realtor.com, as far as enablement and sales training for our agents goes, what I've seen is there's a heavy, heavy, heavy emphasis on the very first phone call. And that's usually where it ends, right? It might be a macro level, hey, you need to make sure you're setting second appointments with people, or hey, you need to make sure that your agents are conducting buyer consultations. That's great, but how? I think that conversion, and this is just my opinion, I think that conversion, the little nuances in between these big macro level stages in the funnel are where the magic is made, right? Most agents I know, when they hang up the phone, they're like, okay, well, I have like 30,000 things to do before I actually go and show this house. And they just kind of wing it again. What we've done in this course is given people an SOP and an entire checklist of everything they need to do in sequential order. So it's not just a hang up the phone and wing it. It's a hang up the phone, literally pull out a checklist that we've got developed in here, and they need to do it step by step. Usually when people see this content for the first time and actually go through the course itself, I used to get a lot of agents looking at me going, well, Chris, this is a lot of work. This is kind of tedious. This is kind of all over the place. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, conversion's not easy, right? This is intentionally tedious because this is what it takes to actually convert leads at the highest level. So in that module, we talk specifically about, cool, from the second you hang up the phone, here's everything you need to do before you go and show this house. It is a step-by-step, anyone can do it, just standard operating procedures so that they know when they go into that opportunity, they don't have to wing it, they're prepared, right? Conversion is like, there's an element of luck, but as you guys know, I think about it this way, there's no such thing as luck. It's preparation meeting opportunity. And we want to make sure that once they're going to go out in the field and actually meet with a customer, they are prepared to the highest level possible, right? So it's all entirely SOP'd and checklisted. All they have to do is follow along and just check stuff as they complete it. Next, how to show a home start to finish, including before and after viewing the home. What we find most often, and I'm sure you guys have kind of heard this, is agents have a natural inclination to show a house, right? And I'm not talking about you guys. For the most part, everyone that's on this call that I know personally is a high performer, right? You guys aren't doing shit like this. But when I've been out in the field with agents without training them, kind of to experience what their natural inclination is, they show a house and one of two things happens. One, they don't set a pretense that you're going to have a conversation before they actually leave the showing, and they become like a door opener. That's happening pretty frequently right now with online leads, where a customer comes in, goes through the house and goes, all right, cool, thanks, Brant, and leaves, right? And then the agent's sitting there with their hands in their pockets like, well, shit, dude, what do I do now? And then it's not, oh, well, I should have done something differently. It's, oh, this person's a tire kicker. Then they call them a couple of times and it's a junk lead because they're not picking up their phone, because in reality, they didn't build enough value with that person face to face to actually get them to do anything, right? So we've scripted the entire initial interaction that happens before the customer actually steps foot in the house, to during the showing, to after they're actually done showing the house, and we have to kind of figure out what the next thing is on the action plan, right? But the whole idea is, most agents, I recently have spoken at events and stuff where I've asked groups full of people, thousands of agents, hey, how did you guys actually learn to show a house? And most of the time it was, well, I kind of just winged it, or I went on YouTube and watched a Tom Ferry video, or whatever it may be. The simple reality is that giving people a standardized process, regardless if they're 10 days in the business or 10 years in the business, it's more important than it is now than ever. And the reality is, this type of process is applicable to all of their leads, not just online stuff, right? If they have a standardized process to make sure they're actually showing houses the right way now, it's going to impact all parts of the business, not just the online lead stuff, right? Buyer consultations, when and how to have them, scripted out from start to finish, including follow-up. This part right here is where I see most teams that I work with, either on a coaching basis or whatever it looks like. This is where I find most fail. It's not, hey, agents on my team, you should be conducting buyer consultations, and here's why and here's how. It's, hey, you guys should be doing buyer consultations, and it's great. How do I do that? And it's, I don't know, figure it out, right? Go online, look it up, YouTube it. We've scripted out the entire buyer consultation from start to finish. Tom and I worked really, really hard on this thing to make sure that it was like updated for 2024 and badass. It is market specific, right? It's using the way market conditions are now to really make sure that we're building value with these folks so that the opportunity goes the way we want it to. The last part of that is the follow-up component. I ran out of room when I was typing this. We have an entire module that is purely dedicated to following up with online lead opportunities. So it's not a, hey, expect everything to just go perfect every time. It's, hey, here's actual follow-up techniques, follow-up scripts, and here's how frequently you should be doing it. I'm sure people on this call, I know a couple of team leaders on this phone call that have reached out to me recently, like, hey, I can't get people to follow up. I think that people don't follow up either because they don't see the value in something or they don't know how. And then it builds call reluctance, and it's this mountain of crap that they have to climb up to actually start doing it. So we've got an entire module specifically on following up with leads. This is a double-edged sword because if you have like a big database of leads that your agents aren't calling, again, this is impacting more than the just online lead stuff that they're getting top of the funnel. If you have a big database of leads that need calling, now you've got agents that are equipped on how to actually have those conversations and how they can call and bring value and not just do the, hey, Carl, it's Chris from eHomes. The reason I'm calling is because not too long ago you inquired about buying a house. How's your home search going? That sucks, right? Someone's going, cool. Why are you calling? There's nothing of value there, right? So we've got an entire module dedicated to purely lead follow-up. Last but not least, and where I think a lot of the magic happens, a standardized process on how to get offers accepted. I would challenge everyone on this call that's either client-facing at Zillow or a team leader or a solo agent to think about your, like, hey, I bought online leads, or I was given online leads. I have people that want to buy houses. I guarantee you that there are agents on your team or solo agents right now that are experiencing this where, hey, I have people that want to buy houses, but I can't seem to get an offer accepted. The market's now a little bit different, right? A lot different than it was a couple of years ago. I would argue that getting offers accepted is still a science. And for those of you guys that are experienced, good agents on this call right now, think about all of the rapport building that goes into getting an offer accepted. I am in the camp of people that believe that getting an offer accepted starts when you call that listing agent to schedule a showing, right? There is a science that goes into building rapport, kissing a little butt, not too much so you're being like flattery with someone, right? But there is a science that goes into that. And after having been through that myself as both a new agent and team leader, those are difficult conversations, right? That is, it's something that you can script a little bit, but there's also some like outcomes that you're looking for on these calls. So we've standardized the process of how to actually talk to a listing agent, how to submit a good offer. And I'm not talking about from a terms perspective, that's something we talk about in here, but what can I do to put my best foot forward as an agent? So if I have a client who wants to buy a house, I'm putting my best foot forward every single time. Same concept, standardized, checklisted SOP that an agent can literally just print out and have with them going, cool, I'm going to write an offer. Here's the 15 things I need to do before I hit send on my keyboard, right? And it's broken down step by step. It's not a, cool, here's the outcomes. It's literally foolproof. Do this, do this, do this. Some of it's going to make them uncomfortable, right? I've gone through this with a couple of you guys on this call, and I've even had team leaders push back on me like, dude, that is like so above and beyond. Like, why? And I'm like, because no one else is doing it. The simple reality is that in this market, in any market, do something different, get something different. If we have an opportunity to outperform everyone purely by just doing more and looking more professional, I would consider that a win. Cool. So the course itself, really linear. There's only like 5 things. Intake of online leads from all these different sources, including scripts and every objection you're going to get. What happens after you hang up the phone before the initial consultation, right? How to actually prepare from a process standpoint to go and show a house. How to show a home start to finish, scripted. So someone can literally just go, cool, I've got it on a clipboard. I'm just going to kind of go off this thing and interact with someone as I see fit. Buyer consultations, when and how to have them and what the outcomes are. Following up with online leads specifically, regardless if they're new or old, and then a standardized process of getting offers accepted. That's it. Really intentionally. And I know what you're thinking, oh my gosh, Chris, there's tons of stuff missing about being an agent. 100%, I couldn't agree with you more. This is not a learn how to be an agent, super generalized, cool training. This is a, hey, if you have agents on your team that need to get better at online lead conversion, this is it. This isn't a get better at open house stuff. This isn't a get better at door knocking. This is a get better at not lighting $100 bills on fire and wasting money on Zillow leads, right? It's one of those things where you fix it, you change one thing, it changes everything, so to speak, right? So that is it, really, really intentionally. So there's a couple of loose ends that I want to tie up with everyone, and then we'll have some time for Q&A if anyone has one. How much are we going to charge for this, Chris? Oh my God, I have no clue. I'm being like completely transparent with you guys for a second, right? For those of you guys that know me on this call, I'm always going to shoot you straight. I have no clue how much we're going to charge for this, which brings me to my next point and the most important thing. For everyone on this call, right? If you could take 2 minutes and think about this after the call, right? Really think about, hey, how valuable is this? There's no wrong answers. I want to hear everything, right? So if it's one of those things where it's like, hey, Chris, did my AirPods go off again? Cool. Sorry, guys. Joe, you raised your hand, sir.
Yeah, so are you talking about as a per license or a per team basis?
I think the answer is yes, right? Both. Um, we're still trying to figure out, obviously, like for a solo agent, right, and a team leader that's buying multiple seats, there will probably be different cost. But I would appreciate feedback on both of those fronts, right? Just from a, hey, how much, if I was an agent, what should I charge for this and what does this look like? What I want to encourage you guys to think about, and I'm going to like totally invite criticism at this point. I don't want you to pull punches and send me a number that you think I would like to hear, right? Because at the end of the day, I'm not spending my money on this, right? I want you to send me a number that you've thought about and gone, cool. Based on what I've heard, it could be X. And we might be in a situation where you say, hey, Chris, I don't know enough about this, right? I don't know if the content sucks or is great. Assume the content is really good. For those of you guys on this call that are my friends that have kind of seen this before and kind of gone through some of this stuff, you've gotten a preview of like what the actual content looks like. Just assume that it's good. I'm not going to tell you that it's the greatest thing on the planet and this bajillion-dollar thing, and you're going to just sign up for this and make millions of dollars. That's not the way it works. But I will say this, with where lead conversion is at right now and the training that exists in the marketplace now, I'm confident that this is a dramatic improvement to what exists, right? If I was sitting here telling you, oh my gosh, this is the greatest thing on the planet, you probably should run in the other direction. It's pretty damn good though, is the way I would look at it. So I encourage you and I invite you guys, send me what you think this should cost. I'm open to all ideas, right? Don't pull punches. Send me a number that you like will like you'll stand up with and like and rep, right? Because at the end of the day, I need to hear it all, good, bad, and ugly. Cool. So that is it, right? We have some time. So there's one other thing before we go to Q&A. And Abel, I'll get to you momentarily, good sir. If this sounds interesting, right, we're planning on launching this in Q1. So to give you guys a high level overview of where this is at now, I filmed this 2 weeks ago. Tom's team's currently editing it. We're building out the software functionality in Humaniz for it to actually live in. We're expecting to launch this sometime in Q1, right? For people that are on my team that are here, I'm not saying Q1, Jan 1st. I'm saying like middle of Q1-ish, probably. So if it sounds interesting and it's something you're going, hey, Chris, this sounds cool, I want to learn more about it, I'm going to send this link out after we're done. It's a form you can fill out. It's not a, hey, give us money, click this form type thing. It's a, hey, what's your name and email address so that as we have updates, we can keep you updated as it kind of goes, right? Feel free to send it to friends if you have friends that are struggling with online lead conversion, et cetera. As we start making some landmark progress with this thing, I'm going to be sending out video updates just of where we're at, what we're thinking about. My whole goal is to make this thing iterative. First pass, for those of you guys that are kind of involved in Tom's ecosystem, you've heard this a million times, like done is better than perfect. Our whole idea is crank something out that's great. It's not going to be perfect rep one and iterate constantly because it's such a big problem in the space. So I appreciate your guys' time. We have some time for Q&A. Abel, I know you had a question, I think, sir.
Yeah, you just answered my question. It was gonna be where is this gonna live?
Yep.
Because if it's gonna is it gonna live in Humanize?
Yep. It's going to live inside Humaniz.
Okay. I mean, I can just give you feedback right away. We
Sure.
pay an average of like $500 to $600 a month for Trainual.
Yep.
We paid about $2,500 to have someone help us build it out
Yep.
originally, plus, our own time, labor. So, and that would be a way to kind of like average out how much it costs to create if someone wants
Sure.
to do it themselves. But I would say, um, think about those who don't have this and think about those who
Those that
do have.
do. Yep.
Yeah.
100%, man. That's great feedback. Lauren, can we make sure to think about that? That's super important. Thank you, sir. That's great feedback. Cool. All right. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Hey, Chris, you should do this differently because it's stupid. No. Cool. All right, sweet. Well, this has been awesome, guys. Go for it. Do we have
Chris,
another question?
I have a quick one for you, buddy.
Yep.
If you're not a Humaniz customer, would you sell it standalone or no?
That's a good question. That's a tough question, Carl. We're thinking about how, right? The idea is for like a solo agent, the answer is 110%, right? Like, yes, short answer is if a solo agent comes in and says, hey, I want to go through this, yes, we will sell it standalone. We're trying to figure out the how with a team leader that comes to us and says, hey, standalone, I just want the training. My gut and what I'm fighting for on my team is yes, there will be some sort of solution to do that. I'm just working through the details with our team. If that's super important, Carl, and you think that's like a big thing, let's have a conversation about it later so I can understand the whole ethos behind it. And I'll tell you where our head's at and we'll come up with something. But yes, short answer is work in progress. Cool.
Hey, Chris, I've got a question for you.
Yep.
Hand up. Have you guys thought through giving team leads, sort of some oversight to how their agents are progressing through the content? Will they be able to see that?
Yeah. So for team leaders specifically, yeah, short answer is yes, right? What we've found is that in past experiences with friends and other teams and stuff we've worked with where they might have something built out, the biggest complaint is it takes people forever to go through it, right? Or hey, they go through it and they just kind of like fiddle faddle and TikTok with their way through it and come out on the other ends kind of missing things. So a big part of this, Ryan, is going to be the vision I have for it is everyone starts on the same day. So let's say I'm a team leader and I've got 10 agents that are going to go through it. Instead of sending it to 10 people and saying, okay, cool, you guys are all enrolled, go through it, have fun. The idea is everyone goes through it together and we'll be building that out into the Humaniz UI. So what does that mean? Everyone starts on Monday, right? We do a quick little meeting with everyone. Hey, cool, we're going to get started. Great, blah, blah, blah. It could even be remote. Everyone goes through modules 1, 2, and 3 on Monday, right? And then on Monday afternoon, it'll send a quick report saying, hey, Abel, Bob, Susie, and Joe just went through module 1. Here's what they learned. Here's what you need to role play with them to make sure that they actually got the content, right? So the idea behind it, Ryan, is not progress is super important, but we're going to be providing like the structure too for team leaders specifically. So it's cool, everyone's going through at the same pace and you don't have to deal with those outliers and stuff. And that will all be built out into Humaniz. So short answer to your question is yes. You'll be able to pull up a dashboard and see Ryan's at 58%, Bob's at 20%, et cetera, et cetera. That enablement component is what we're really, really putting a lot of energy into. Because again, if it were as simple as sign people up, have them watch videos and cash commission checks, I'd be on an island right now. Cool.
Thank you.
Sweet, man. Cool. All right. Well, I appreciate everyone hopping on here. I'll send out a recording of this after the fact, and then I'll make sure to send out an email with that link if you guys want to be kept updated with this whole thing. As we get closer to this whole thing, we will for sure be doing more updates pretty frequently. And again, if you guys could take 5 minutes for me, think about it, send me over some ideas, some feedback, all that cool stuff. I'm looking for it and would welcome it all. So thank you for your time. Appreciate everyone being on here. I know it's a Monday afternoon, and I will talk to you guys all soon. Thank you. Later, guys.